Okay, so I wanted to do commentary over this run of Seafrog because this game is really cool, it's brand new, and I want to start submitting it to marathons. So I want to make this video just as a way to commentate over what's happening. Seafrog Kraken percent is the concept of going from a fresh save file to the end of the first boss fight. To do that, we're going to progress into two different ships, but right now we got to get through the tutorial sequence. And the way we're going to take this is actually really precise. I'm going to enter this first door at a very precise time to kind of skip a tutorial pop-up. And then having loaded a save file already, I am going to skip every other tutorial that would normally pop up in this section. My boost meter is a little bit covered by my controller layout. I'm hopefully going to fix that in the future. But the essential gist of this game is you have a rocket wrench that kind of acts as like a hoverboard or skateboard, and you have boost, and you're going to be using that as your primary method of travel to collect 3 master gears. In our case, we're going to collect 1 to repair our ship and blast out of the sea hole. Again, this subcategory only gets 1 of those because we only fight the first boss fight. Right now is just a little bit of platforming, so I can kind of explain some of the general mechanics. The wrench will stick to ceilings for a brief period of time. Using boost extends that. You'll see me doing this thing where I kind of spam right trigger to constantly get on and off the board. I find that this is a good way to preserve momentum, as well as kind of build speed when you're on solid ground. So overall, you'll see me doing that a lot throughout this run. Now, this is the main hub. This is your ship, the Hammerhead. The Seafrog and the Sea Captain acquire this at the start of the game. So to get off of this, we're going to have to collect 185 golden barnacles, which are the main currency in the game that you only really use to unlock ships. And we're only going to have to do that twice here. We're going to have to get about a total of 900-ish in total. We're going to get 185 here to unlock the first ship, which is the Sea Dragon. And then we're going to have to get 685 on top of that to unlock the Chunky Jacket. So right now I'm just doing a little bit of platforming to get as many golden barnacles as I can. The main mechanic of this game to unlock later areas are called bolts. It's that thing that I've been spinning on throughout the entirety of the run. Now's a good time to explain it. You spin it up to 100%, and when you activate all of them in a certain area, it allows you to progress through the next door. The other main thing that I'm going to be doing is opening these fish to get ambergris. Ambergris is essentially just a collection of 50 barnacles with a cutscene tied to it. So that's essentially the loop of the run. There's going to be a couple things that I get throughout the rest of the run that are useful in a couple different ways, but I'll talk about those as I cross them. So this is the engine room where you turn in your golden barnacles. So I'm going to turn in 185 here. It's going to play a cutscene to unlock the Sea Dragon, and then we're going to jump over to the Sea Dragon and start progressing through the first ship. The Sea Dragon is where the Kraken is. It is referred to as the Kraken in-game. So that's going to be the boss fight that we're taking because it is the first one that you can naturally get to. The second boss fight requires you progress into the third ship 4, and the third boss fight is obviously requires all 3 ships. So right here, we're going to be progressing from hull A, which is where we start, all the way through to hull G, and then to the aft and the boss room. So again here, I'm just doing a lot of movement to get a bunch of these bolts, because I have to get every bolt on every single hull, as well as get a bunch of golden barnacles, because I need to be building up to that 685 total all throughout this entire run. Or 665, sorry, throughout this entire run. There's another mechanic of the bolts that hasn't really shown up yet, but is about to show up, where if you just press X, or square in my case, on your controller, or the equivalent button on keyboard. Admittedly, I run this game on controller. I don't know the keyboard binding. You can kind of use it as a launch point to launch yourself with a little more distance than you normally get by just jumping off of it while you're spinning. So you can use that to get to different heights, which will become very relevant later in the run when I use it to do a skip that ignores a cutscene, ignores 2 cutscenes actually, as well as a bunch of tutorial pop-ups. So I used it there to get up to what is called a snake stone. It's that little tiny rainbow thing that has a deposit of 10 golden barnacles in there. It's another way to get barnacles. It's another way to ensure that I'm going to have enough when I progress to the next ship. So this is hull B. We're going to meet a friend here. His name is Gunter, G00NTER. he is going to want us to do a bunch of tricks and give him the excite, because it's very boring for Gunter on all these ships. He's actually on all 3, but we're only going to see him once. He has a required golden key because we need a key to get into room B1, and the only one that we have access to right now is in B4. It is the first reward for beating his challenge. I'm actually going to do the second challenge, which is to get 1,200 points. Gunter always wants you to score a certain amount of points in 30 seconds. There are upgrades in this game that allow you to get more points easier. Since we don't have any, it's only possible to do 2, otherwise we would probably do the third at the same time. But right there, I basically built up all the points I need, so I'm going to do a little bit of precise movement here to try to go all the way across the ceiling by conserving boost to get that snake stone, to get another 10 barnacles, to save myself a little bit of trouble and just kind of do something to kill time in this room. Normally this might be a good spot for announcements or other things for a marathon. So now Gunter has dropped his rewards, so we're going to take this ambergris, another 50 barnacles, and the golden door key. So the door key we're going to hold on to for a little bit because there's no reason to go down to where I have to drop the key off yet. You can only hold one item at a time, which kind of becomes relevant later, but isn't super important. So I'm continuing to just get every bolt that I have to for this section. Another snake stone. I'm grabbing more golden barnacles, and now I'm going to throw the key into the door while I'm on the bolt, which just saves me a little bit of time of having to wait in front of the door for it to open. I'm going to grab these last 2 bolts. I'm going to go up to the top here to grab another ambergris. And I'm going to skip a manual in one of the barrels down below. Mechanics manuals give you more abilities. This one gives you the ability to perform manuals, so it's the manual. All that does is really allow you to get more points and build up more boost in a more efficient way, but the way that I play the game, I don't need that. Normally, I would say it's required for a full game run, although technically it's never required, but it makes your life so much easier. But in this short category, it's not required, and it's another cutscene and menuing, so I don't do it. Now, Hull C is an interesting one to route because there's only 2 rooms that you ever have to enter. There's Hull C3 and C4. So I'm going to essentially do this a entire run through of Hull C and then be teleported back to the spawn by a non-player controlled character called the Ratty Godmother. The Ratty Godmother is a little bit of time loss, but it's unavoidable time loss. She's always going to show up no matter what. Whenever you enter and leave a room in Hull C, she's going to spawn for the first time, and she creates a little parkour challenge that the Seafrog can either do or back out of. Since you're progressing back there anyway, there's no real harm in doing it, and it turns out that the reward that we get for this one is actually extremely worth it for the run. The reward that we get is called a mod chip. It's one of, I believe, 24 throughout the entire game that allow you to, like I said before, get more trick points, change your total health value, change how much fuel you can store up, or in our case with this one, how powerful our boost is, and by proxy our max speed. So we're going to use that chip to get a little more speed, which is going to be relevant for literally the next hull. It is extremely helpful in doing a skip that requires a lot of speed. So I'm going to be retreading here with a few more obstacles. If I were to hit any of them, I'd respawn back at the start of this challenge. But it's pretty easy to avoid them in this challenge. And then I'm going to jump and collect the mod chip, which is going to reduce my max health from 3 to 2, and give me that boost speed that I mentioned before. So I'm going to do a fast menuing here, equip the mod chip, do the Ratty Godmother cutscene, and then we're going to use that mechanic before that I talked about on bolts, where I'm going to not latch onto it, but kind of launch myself from it, and then skip past that blue gear or that blue gearbox and the associated rail that was kind of in the background there. That allows me to skip 2 different cutscenes as well as having to grab an item. So it just saves a ton of time overall, and we only ever have to really do that once. So it's an early enough reset point if you mess it up, but the real reset point is going to be here in Hull D. You can back this up, and it's pretty easy to get back to if you do mess it up in a marathon setting, but this is probably the hardest trick in the entire run coming up. we're going to do one room, which is D3, to get another speed boost, as well as get that health point back. So grab the bolt on the way, grab a couple golden barnacles. We're approaching that 660 mark that I'm gonna have to pass, but we're not actually gonna pass it right until we leave. It's pretty much gonna be perfect timing. Another cutscene here. The sinkhole is constantly getting deeper in the ocean, which constantly makes it harder for us to escape. The sea captain makes a fun pun here of just let that sink in. And now we're going to grab the bolt that's in here, as well as another mod, the second mod ship, and the last one here. We're going to grab one more mod ship in the next ship that is required for progression. However, for now, we're going to equip that second mod ship, which gives us back the health. It doesn't give us back the heart, but it gives us back the maximum health. So unfortunately, we only get one shot at this trick the way I'm doing it. You can get another health piece, or you can refill that heart pretty close by. But I'm going to manipulate this rat's position to launch me over to the left, bounce myself up, and use the invincibility to avoid those spikes and get myself over that ledge that would normally require collecting 3 different items. So it's a really cool skip, and it's fairly early on, so it's not brutal as a reset point, since it's about halfway through the run, but it is a really cool skip and a really tricky one to pull off consistently. Now we're going to grab the purple fuse. We're going to need this for later because we have to come back and grab an item in the room that this unlocks. So I'm going to go back over here, throw the purple fuse into the fuse box over on the right, and enter the next hull. Hull E is going to have the other purple fuse that we need. There are only 2 that we need for this ship, so we're going to get the second one here, as well as having a couple of Viking runes in that centerpiece that has the 3 holes in it. The Viking runes, 2 of them are on this ship. One of them is in D2, that room that we're working toward unlocking. And the other one is on this hull in room, I believe E2 is the name, but it might be E3. I believe it's E2, though. I don't think there's too many side rooms in this hull. But I'm going to be grabbing all the bolts on my way to it. And then again, there's probably a little bit of time here to talk about the marathon, talk about announcements, and all that sort of stuff. But for now, I'll just keep talking. We're going to approach the Chunky Kraken soon. Once I grab this rune, we're going to go grab the other purple fuse and grab the last little bit of ambergris and golden barnacles that we need. I'm attempting to throw the Viking rune, which is good enough. It just needs to be over there. I can re-grab it and put it into the proper spot later. I just need to go grab the purple fuse in E1. The purple fuse is at the back of this room, so I'm gonna break that barrel, grab the purple fuse. And now I'm gonna kind of be juggling a little bit, just really briefly, juggling the purple fuse and the Viking rune. So there we go, deposit the Viking rune, re-grab the purple fuse, and do a little bit of movement on my way back out. I'm going to hit this ambergris, then I'm going to deposit the purple fuse, grab one more ambergris that is now accessible because of grabbing that purple fuse, and then we're going to progress to the Chunky Kraken. Saving and quitting out in this game puts you back to the Hammerhead, your ship. However, it drops any held items that you have, so this is the only time we're going to do this. So once I grab this ambergris, I'm going to save and quit, and then immediately go back into that the same save file, which will put me at the... It'll put me at the Hammerhead. So now I go into the engine room, deposit all these golden barnacles I've been collecting, the 665 that is necessary. This will unlock the Chunky Kraken and allow me to progress into the second hall. We're here for 3 things in total, all of which are in the same room, which is really convenient for us. We are, well, except for one. One thing is in a separate room. But it's required to progress there anyway, so it kind of works out. In Hull A of the Chunky Kraken, the first hull, we are going to go into a side room to grab the Rocket Wrench power-up. The Rocket Wrench is the only mechanic manual that's required for this run, in this route that I take, because you have to use it to get over to a couple areas. So what I'm going to do is go up into this room here, and then progress into the room after it. There's a golden key in the back of this room. I forgot that this is not the room I thought it was. My mistake. A2 into A3. A3 has the room behind it, which holds the rocket wrench power-up, which by pressing B or circle on the controller will allow me to launch myself forward in the air, kind of like a dash ability, which is really nice to have just as a movement tool, and is required for a little bit of movement that is coming up. So this is the rocket wrench manual, which I won't immediately use, but I'll use it in the next room if I remember correctly. Just because it's a nice little tool of like correctional movement. There it is. That's the rocket wrench power. It's very nice to have overall. I'm gonna finish up. The Chunky Kraken has a different gimmick with its bolts where you have to do them in a certain order by the number on the top. So I'm gonna jump down from 4 to 5, progress into hole B, which will be the final section of the Chunky Kraken. We're going to go into B2, which has another mod chip for us, as well as the Viking rune that we need to take back to the Sea Dragon. B2 is a fun room because it gives us access to one of the 3 different types of magnetic interactables in the game, for lack of a better term. This is a mag wall that is behind the frog right now. The mag walls are essentially, if you have the right mod chip equipped, you will kind of drag along them if you are holding right trigger as you pass them. So I'm gonna equip the mag wall, use it very briefly there, almost unnoticeable. It'll be noticeable later the next time I do use it, but you can essentially use them for infinite height along the wall if you do it right, or to just kind of progress across them, as you'll see coming up in one of the first rooms that we'll interact with after dropping off this Viking rune. So I'm going to go through here, take this teleporter that I activated earlier in the Sea Dragon in room C3. This will help me get back to hull E faster, which is, again, where I need to drop off the Viking rune before progressing other areas to get back and get the other runes. The nice thing about the rocket wrench is that it makes that skip that we did earlier significantly easier. It makes it so we don't have to line up the rat, we don't have to do the damage boosting, so it makes that a one-time trick. So it's a very risky but a very cool trick, and it's not something that you have to rely on, which is very nice. So now, I've dropped off the second Viking rune, gone a little bit out of my way, I went a little bit far. There's an example of the mag wall being used. Again, by holding right trigger as I pass it, I'll kind of stick to it and glide across it. And now we're going to go into D2, where there's more mag walls, which would be required. I believe you can also do this room with only the rocket wrench, but grabbing the mag walls just makes everything else convenient later down the line, so the little bit of time loss you have of like the cutscene that happens when you grab the mod chip just makes it so worth it. That's the final Viking rune, so we're going to go turn that in, get a pretty long cutscene where we probably have some time for announcements. But I will use that to kind of explain the rest of the run, as well as what the Viking horn does. So, the Viking runes, you grab 3 of them, and when you do, you unlock access to the Viking horn. You can see those kind of ghostly, apparition-like interactables and doorways and objects and all sorts of stuff in the hulls of the Sea Dragon. And by having the Viking horn as your held object, when you get close enough to them, they will become solid. They will become interactable. It's a very interesting mechanic and a little bit annoying on first playthrough until you beat the boss, because as soon as you grab the horn, that Viking on the right is going to come after you and non-stop kind of have a circular hitbox, kind of like a buzzsaw. Thankfully, you have a little bit of immunity frames when the Viking spawns, because otherwise that would be unfair. However, if you get hit by the Viking, which I believe I might later in the run, I don't remember, If you get hit by her, you take 1 heart of damage, and she will despawn. And then respawn later. So here I am using the Viking Horn to kind of clean up those 2 remaining bolts in hull E. I'm going to use the Viking Horn in hull F, and then it is not required in hull G, so I'm going to drop it to avoid getting damaged by the Viking again. I'm also going to drop it at the start of this hull. The reason I do this is normally she spawns in a spot that'd be really inconvenient for hitting this first bolt right there. So I'm going to throw the horn, grab this bolt, and then go back for it, which just saves me a little bit of grief of having to deal with the spawn right there. So now I just have to do the rest of hull F, which involves grabbing a couple of these bolts. Then I'm going to have to go into a room, grab another door key, and at that point I can just abandon the horn, which I'm going to do right here. And now this will stop the Viking from spawning for the rest of the run until the boss fight, where the Viking is just present for some reason. In here is going to be the door key. We're going to need 2 more door keys throughout this entire run. Well, 1 more after this one. So there's a total of, I believe, 4 door keys throughout the entire run. I'm going to grab another bolt on my way here. I can actually come back for that one because it's right next to the door that would progress me. The remaining bolts on this hull in this ship are in F2 here, so there's 3 in here. One thing I have not mentioned about the bolts is that the entry speed into the bolts tends to impact how fast they fill up. So if you ever see me doing a rocket wrench straight into the bolt, the reason is that's generally the fastest way you can enter into one of the bolts. So it'll generally give you the fastest spin speed. I don't think I really get any of the slowest ones where you just kind of fall into it and then it takes about 5 to 6. No, it's more like 7 or 8 seconds to spin 1 bolt. Whereas if you get a really fast entry, you can get it done in almost like 2 seconds. I don't know. It's much quicker if you enter it properly as opposed to entering it slowly. So here's hull G. This is the last normal hull of the entire run. There's the last door key, which we're going to use to enter G2 up above. I kind of messed up the movement here, but it's okay. I can kind of back it up by doing some of this. Overall, the movement in this game is really sick, and it's a really fun casual game as well as a speed run. Any percent has been a challenge to route, so Kraken percent has been a fun in-between of just a small amount of game to play, while still being a really cool run that shows off pretty much everything this game has to offer, at least in terms of basic concepts. There's 2 more magnetic types of interactables that we don't really see throughout the run, throughout Kraken percent at least, but the rest of the other 2 ships are very interesting and very fun to play through. It's definitely worth checking out on Steam if you find yourself enjoying this type of run. This room is kind of tricky to navigate in general, so I'm having a little bit of a struggle here. This is probably where I lose the most time in this run. Otherwise, this run is very clean. But thankfully, I'm done with G2. So now, I just have to grab a couple more bolts. I don't even think I have to enter any more rooms. Yeah, that's the final bolt there. And now at this point, I have to go into the aft, which is the room before the boss fight that houses a golden bolt. The golden bolt is used to unlock the boss door. And once I open the boss door, I can start to explain a little bit of how the bosses work. All the bosses in this game are fairly similar in concept. It's just that their attack patterns and the obstacles in their rooms are all fairly different. So here's the golden bolt that I kind of throw to the side, missing where I need to throw it in, which is the eye. I'm actually going to get off and re-grab on. There's an example of me doing a rocket wrench spin into a bolt. It just helps open the door a little faster than most other entries onto that door. And now we enter the Kraken room. This boss fight is fairly straightforward in terms of how to damage the boss. Essentially, at these windows, you're going to see the eye of the Kraken. You essentially just have to interact with it the same way you would any other interactable in the game, which in my case is square. On Xbox, it'd be X, and I believe on PC it's E, but don't quote me on that. But essentially, we're just going to have to do that a bunch of times to get it to go up to the top, or eventually we're going to pull its eyeball out and collect the gear that is on the left in its monocle. We need 3 of those to escape the sinkhole. The speedrun only grabs this one, and time will be as soon as we grab that from the sinkhole. Or as soon as we grab that from where it drops up top, sorry. This boss fight's pretty sick, and there's a lot of really cool movement that goes into it. I kind of get really lucky with that lineup there to get up to the top left. But overall, this is a really sick game. The movement just feels so good once you start to get it down. There's a lot of really cool stuff that the boss fight kind of gets to show off a lot of it. And overall, there's just a lot of movement that gets to be shown off throughout this entire run. There's a little more tech, but not really anything crazy that's being missed out on in a full game run. I think this category overall is just a really nice way to show off everything, at least most things, that this game has to offer. And a little bite-sized, marathon-sized portion, because any percent for this game is going to be massive. I do get a little bit backwards there and mix up where I have to go for the eyeball. The pattern is set, I just forgot it because this game is still brand new and I had a little bit of a lapse in memory there. However, this is going to be the last 2 sections. It's going to go back to where it starts, and then it's going to go directly above where it starts. I'm just going to have to do another climb. Have a little bit of trouble. I'm trying to do a... There we go. I'm trying to get the rocket wrench to be close to the ceiling, so I can just kind of stick to the ceiling and get up like that. And that is the final hit on the Kraken, and then time will be as soon as I grab that Master Gear. But yeah, that is Seafrog, Kraken percent. This game is sick. This run is sick. I am hoping to get this into marathons as much as possible because I love playing this game and this speedrun is sick. So thank you so much for watching.